Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green 19 podcast. I'm Dominique Yates, joined as always by Ryan Wood and Tom Silverstein. Just a few days before the Packers head to Soldier Field to take on the Chicago Bears, another big rivalry. And it's funny just thinking personally because somewhat new to covering the NFL. I actually didn't realize this was the oldest rivalry in the NFL.
Well, you're about to find out.
Yeah.
That's all you talk about on Packers-Bears week. This is the oldest rivalry in the NFL.
Not the oldest consecutive, however, because the Packers did not play the Bears during the 1982 strike year. And so it's the Packers and Lions are the longest.
Why is that?
streak.
Why didn't they play the Bears that year? I didn't know this.
Yeah.
Teach me, Spoon.
They split everything into two divisions for the strike year. And I don't remember exactly how they determined who they play. You know, the strike year was, I think teams only played like 8 games or 10 games or something like that. And the Packers actually made the playoffs that year. But I can't remember how they figured out who would play who.
That seems like a mistake.
But for some reason, they didn't play the Bears, which seems crazy, right?
Yeah.
I can say my welcome to this rivalry moment happened Wednesday before we went inside to watch practice and stretch.
Yeah.
Guy on a motorbike in a Bears jacket said, "Hey, I'm media. I was coming to check out practice."
I've never seen that before. I was standing right next to this person, and I was like, it was a little disconcerting because, like, you don't know this guy. He's a random Yahoo with a Bears jacket on a motorbike.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, what's going on now? And Packers PR turned him away.
Yes.
And
yes, he did not. He did not get into the Don Hudson Center. We can clear that up.
They
That
handled
would have
it
been
well.
cool if he had just driven his bike right into the Don Hudson Center.
But think about it. You don't know who this guy is. It was a little
Well, as long as
like
he wasn't armed or anything,
yeah.
I wouldn't have cared.
But yeah, that was my welcome to the Bears-Packers rivalry. So it was pretty fun.
I think it's important to conceptualize, though. This is the oldest rivalry in the NFL, but it's the youngest roster in the NFL against a rookie quarterback. Like, this is very much a rivalry of the fans, and have at it. I mean, there's enough in this world that can get you down. Have at a rivalry week. It's all good and fun. But I think for the Chicago Bears, there's certainly inside that locker room for good reason. I would think there'd be more animosity toward the Packers. Packers don't care about this locker room. Doesn't care about the Bears. There's no scars there. The Detroit Lions right now are much more of an intense
And the
rivalry.
Vikings.
And the
Vikings
Vikings, always the Vikings.
You know, it's strictly a fan thing. You're right. Back in the day in the 80s when Forrest Gregg and Mike Ditka were the head coaches, they hated each other. I mean, absolutely hated. You know, they played against each other. Well, did Ditka play? Yeah, he must have played. Well, I'm not sure if he played when Forrest was still playing. But anyway, they were head coaches. They hated each other. And it's famous, most famous game before that, during that week, Forrest Gregg played tape of all the things he considered were cheap shots from the Bears, right? You know, and just a continuous loop and to get the players fired up. So what happened, they just went out and the Packers played like fools. Like Kenny Stills, who was a young safety, went and drilled Matt Suey, a fullback, as he was walking back to the huddle. You know, so they were getting someone through Walter Payton over the bench. You know, it was just like crazy
WWE
stuff. You know, and then of course there was the Charles Martin slam of Jim McMahon. I think that was in a different game. But anyway, I mean, that's when this thing was for real. And now, you know, I mean, at one point, Ditka, they were just killing the Packers, and he put the fridge in to run in a touchdown, you know, to just rub it in as much as he could. So great rivalry from that standpoint.
I think the one thing that I was interested in, especially moving to like covering the NFL on a full-time basis, like did rivalries actually mean things like for the players now? Because, you know, on the college levels, like I came from like watching Kentucky, Louisville, a guy like Xavier McKinney who talked about the Alabama-Auburn rivalry. So I was wondering sometimes on the pro level is it more for the fans? Did the players actually get something from it? And I believe McKinney did say, like, especially even on the NFL level, like he said there's still very much some pride there. And Like, he knows, like, okay, if you're part of this team, you don't like, you can say that rivalry.
I think it depends on the player. It goes player to player in the locker room. Unless, when I first got here on the beat in 2014, the Seahawks at that point were very much a rivalry because of the Fail Mary was fresh, and that 14 season, it was very clear. They opened the season in Seattle, the Packers did in 14. The same night that the Seahawks unveiled their Super Bowl championship banner, it was very clear from the onset that these two teams were in each other's way, and that was going to happen. You don't get that vibe doesn't exist here with the Bears. The Bears are in nobody's way. The Bears are always in the cellar, so it doesn't have that dynamic. But player to player, and Xavier McKinney is a good example of a player that absolutely will seek out some animosity to play with that chip on his shoulder. Before the bye, Lions week, he said that the gimmicky plays that the Lions use, he feels are meant to embarrass opponents, and he takes exception to that. He thinks that guys in the locker room take exception to that, and then we didn't really see any gimmicky plays. The Lions just lined up and beat them, but that was Lions week. And this week, he was talking about DJ Moore, who apparently had called out Xavier McKinney or the Packers in some sense, and he said, he's not worried about DJ Moore because DJ Moore walks off the field during a play. Like, he's never seen that. Like, how you want to worry about someone that quits on your team that way? So I think it's player to player. Xavier McKinney, yes. A lot of other players, not so much. I think what this week is, I picked the Bears to be a wild card team entering this season, and boy, was I wrong. This is a bad football team that is in the midst of breaking their rookie quarterback. You have to take advantage of the cupcakes on your schedule. There's not a lot of them in this league. The Bears are a team that the Packers absolutely should beat. They have them twice more. They need those 2 wins because you got to beat the teams you should beat.
When you look at this Bears team, Tom, I know you like to look at film and just do a lot of deep dive analyzing. I watched more of the Bears during the first half, during the 4-2 stretch, and I didn't see as much during this last. I didn't get to see the Patriots game, and so I see the scores and maybe see highlights and try to figure out what in the world's going on. I guess from what you've noticed, what has caused this slump right now? Because on paper it's not like they're all of a sudden playing better teams. Like, they played the Texans really close the first half of the season. The second half, the Patriots, Seahawks. What have you seen?
I think the loss to Washington was devastating for morale, and that's what it seems like to me, because they were playing pretty well. They had Washington beat on Washington's home field. Yeah. And they would have been 5-2 if they win that game, right? Yeah. So I don't think they're as bad as you say they are. I think their defense is pretty good. I think they got a ton of talent at receiver and tight end. I think their offensive line is a problem, and that should have been addressed when you're bringing in the number 1 pick in the draft as your quarterback, because that's protect them. It's the same thing with the Jets. You bring in Aaron Rodgers, get an offensive line to protect him. You can bring in all the other talent you want, but if you can't protect them, it's over. Yeah. And that's what the Packers have to do this weekend. Anyway, I think they needed the shakeup of the offensive coordinator. I think it'll ultimately help. I don't know how much they can change in 1 week. Can they really flip the script on an offense? I think they'll do some things that fool the Packers in the beginning, but in the most part, they got to go back to what they do. I don't think they're just terrible. I think their head coach is kind of a lame duck, and they've stopped listening to him, and possibly they're not. They just haven't been inspired, because I do think there's talent there. And then they go to Arizona and just get their butts kicked. Yeah. Just get destroyed. Yeah. And they have no way they should lose to New England. And New England out-schemed them with their defense. I watched a good portion of that game, and they're just bringing blitzes. 9 sacks. They sacked Caleb Williams 9 times. And they're just bringing blitzes that there was nothing he could do. There were no, hot routes or anything. So I think we'll see a little different offense. Anything could happen, but, the Packers are a superior team from talent-wise, and this is a game they need to win.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference between what a team should be on paper and what a team is. And to me, I agree with you. You look at this Bears team on paper. This is a capable defense. Caleb Williams is really, really talented. He is a generational talent. He's surrounded by pass catchers, a lot of pass catching talent. There's talent on this roster.
Yeah.
The offensive line's a mess. Caleb Williams has been sacked 38 times this season. It's the most in the NFL. Number 2, C.J. Stroud has 34. It's not particularly close midway through the season. That's how you break a good young rookie quarterback. That's the problem on paper. So there's a lot to like on paper. But to me, this Bears team is a team in disarray. I completely agree that the Hail Mary in Washington was one of those seminal moments where – to me, on the outside, not in that locker room, but it sure looks like a locker room that's quitting on the head coach. It sure looks like there's not a lot of fight left. Now, firing an offensive coordinator potentially can galvanize a team, especially in a rivalry week, and I think that this could be a potential statement for the Bears to send against the Packers that, hey, there's still talent here, there's still season left, we're turning a new page, new chapter now. That's the danger for the Packers. But for me, the Bears are such disarray right now that I can't view them as a good team because good teams don't have this type of dysfunction, and it's an awfully dysfunctional everything in Chicago.
Yeah, and that goes back to the point you made in terms of offensively. I mean, yeah, there are changes at coaches, but you're not going to be able to reinvent the wheel within a week. It's like you can't go from we ran a pistol offense, now we're going to just install a spread offense or, something that just doesn't really mesh. So I am wondering how you kind of navigate that. But as far as just with the Packers, I guess, how do you think they approach this game? I guess as far as offensively, because you mentioned the defense, just, I guess what do you think would be some of the keys for the offense to have success on the Bears?
Run the ball. Run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. They always have success running the ball at Soldier Field. For whatever reason, they just have a lot of success doing that. The Bears have a really great cornerback in Jalen Johnson. I think their secondary is okay, but their pass rush is good. Their linebackers are really good. But you got to get Jacobs going and then work the play action after that. And, LaFleur, forget trying to kill him right away. Let your defense try to kill him. Let your defense get aggressive and go after Caleb Williams right away. But offensively, I think he needs to be kind of conservative and have some try to get some long drives coming out of the game and just pound the ball. And because they've shown they can run it against anybody, so do it.
Yeah, for you, Ryan, where do you stand? Are you similar boat, different? Where are you? What do you feel like is the key for the Packers on offense, or something that they should do in this game?
Yeah, the Packers, for their own part, are coming out of this bye needing to clean up some execution things. There's some things that you would like to think this team spent the bye really digging into the self-scout, figuring out solutions to how to be more red zone efficient, how to stop the penalties, how to not throw the football to the defense as much as Jordan Love has. I think what's interesting with Josh Jacobs, top 5 in the league in rushing yards, only 3 rushing touchdowns this season. I think Josh Jacobs could possibly be the answer to the red zone inefficiency. What are they, 29th, 30th in the league? I don't have the numbers on this, but it does have the feeling that once they get into the red area, Jordan Love's got the ball a lot. They almost, between the 20s, it's a lot of Josh Jacobs, and it hasn't been a lot of Josh Jacobs finishing dries. I'd
like to see how many penalties they've had in the red zone, because that changes it too. Yeah. So all of a sudden you're first and 15. It seems like they've had a lot of penalties in the red zone, and that kind of takes Josh Jacobs out of the mix.
I feel like they've had penalties all over the field. Maybe it is a red zone. I don't think it's, to me, it's not red zone, or it's like everywhere they've had penalties. But I think that could be something there to finish drives more with Josh Jacobs, because he's one of the best running backs in the league, and he's chewing up yards between the 20s. Finish drives with him.
Speaking of running the ball, I guess this is a nice little spot to throw in as far as injuries when we've updated guys. As far as, the ones Josh Myers, Evan Williams, Jair Alexander, that practiced 2 days in a row. And one guy that I was thinking about was Marshawn Lloyd. He is obviously coming off injured reserve. He's in his practice window right now. But when I think about when they traded Preston Smith, Brian Gutekunst didn't add a player. So right now they technically have 52 of 53 active players. So I don't know. Do you think Lloyd might be the route they go, or is it, I guess, too early to tell?
It would be if they deem him ready. They'll make him active, and they'll carry 4 running backs, and one of those guys will probably be inactive. But they don't have to.
Yeah.
They say by not adding a guy, they saved a week's salary on their salary cap. They didn't add a guy and have to pay him. So, hey, Russ Ball's doing a dance in his office that they saved $38,000 this week or something like that,
Every little bit helps.
Yeah. So I think they just left it open in the hopes that Marshawn lied. But they got to get him back. They got to get him. I'm not expecting much. I'm expecting almost zero from him. His injuries, when a guy's been injured his rookie year, he usually stays injured.
Yeah.
And
he's missed a lot of football.
Yeah, he's missed a lot of football, and you can't expect him to be that good.
Yeah.
But he has so much talent. It's sort of like Adrian Cooper. Like, he was hurt, for so big part of camp, but you're like, got to find a way to at least explore how to get him on the field. And I think Marshawn Lloyd's the same way. So I can't say for sure whether he'll be active, but I think they did keep that open in case he did.
Can a running back be different when it comes to being a rookie that's missed so much time? Like, if it's a defensive lineman, offensive lineman, you're pretty much cooked at this point.
Yes.
But to me, running back's the one position that by far that transitions the best, the quickest to
Absolutely.
the NFL. So that's what I think. I'm not talking this week, but I do think it's premature to write off Marshawn Lloyd for the season because of the nature of his position and that he is talented. I think that there's still a chance at some point this season you could see some type of influence factor in the offense, productivity, something like that.
Well, I'll tell you what, Josh Jacobs just raves about Marshawn Lloyd. He is high on his potential and what he can do. So, yeah, but I am interested. I mean, he got hurt during the rookie camp. The rookies only camp, but the first preseason game he got hurt, and he
looked good there in Cleveland. Didn't he?
He looked good in
started
Cleveland.
to look pretty good. Couple of carries and
Right, then he was done.
Small sample size.
Yeah, and then missed the last 2 preseason games in the opener, and then
that
the Colts
one
game
was
he gets
sort of
hurt.
like the Christian Watson injury. His leg just got tangled up. It wasn't like he planted and tore a hamstring or something. He got that ankle really rolled up on, but still. It's hard. I totally agree with you, Ryan. I think that a running back is the easiest position. The hardest thing is, they can't really throw him out there on third downs. I just don't see it. So that means they have to figure out a package where he's different than Emmanuel Wilson. He's the starting. He's essentially Josh Jacobs, and because I'd have a hard time putting him out there on third down because I don't know that he knows all the blocking stuff.
He's Josh Jacobs with a changeup, right? He's a different runner. So
yes.
But you're still giving a tell to the defense when he's on the field because you know that he can't pass protect. So
it's a good play action opportunity though. Because you're gonna want to get him outside, and if you can fake pitch, and then. The defense is going to keep an eye on him when they see him on the field. That'll be interesting to see if they use him as a decoy if he plays.
Yeah. I guess as we're near wrapping up, at least as far as with the offense, Josh Myers was one of the guys I mentioned a minute ago. He's been practicing. I guess, thoughts on it looks like he's got plenty of, that left wrist is wrapped up. And
yeah, he's got a big old cast on there.
Yeah, looks like he was using it more in practice from what we've seen these past couple of days. So I guess the one thing thoughts on how his approach right now.
If he can play, they got to play him. I mean, you saw what happened with Elton Jenkins in the rain, and he's just hasn't had that experience. And they're a better team when, what Myers can do in terms of using that left hand, that's an issue. But then they're just going to have to give him help. They'll have to give him help in the middle, and the two tackles are going to have to probably block one-on-one a lot. But you kind of saw how valuable he is by watching, what happened in the rain against the Lions. Yeah. So yeah, if he can play, they got to play him.
How many snaps? Was it 3 bad snaps? Like Jenkins said,
yeah,
I think it was
3.
I think it was 3.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say better the left wrist than the right wrist for Josh Myers. I mean, it's not his snapping hand. So
yeah, he wouldn't be playing
helpful.
if it were his right wrist.
But I won't say I was surprised that he was inactive against Detroit. But I did think going into that game there was at least a chance that he would play. So now it's been a bye.
Were you there when he talked after? Because I was watching him, and he could not move that left hand at all. Mm. I mean, he was sort of unwrapping it, and then he was trying to put his socks on, and he couldn't even grab.
That this week?
Like, this was before the Detroit game. So I was like, there's no way this dude is playing.
Yeah,
I mean, his hand was frozen. And now he's got the cast, and it looked like he was moving okay. So I don't know what the extent of the injury is, but he was hurting. He was really hurting.
Yeah, so that's one to watch. Now as we look at the defense for the Packers, obviously you've talked plenty about the offensive line for the Bears and how the key, get some sacks on Caleb Williams. But I guess, thoughts on the defense just getting prepared coming off the bye week as far as even takeaways from the Lions game. And also, I mean, it seems like they might be more healthy again, like adding some more pieces to the puzzle, Ryan. So just thoughts on just the Packers defensively.
I think this has got to be a get-right week for the defensive line. This is a great opportunity to get after a bad offensive line and a rookie quarterback that holds on to the ball too long, wants to extend plays, goes off schedule, which ultimately is a strength of Caleb Williams' game. But when you don't have the offensive line to support it, it's a problem. And it's a problem that the Packers' defensive line should take advantage of. This has the feel to me like Week 3 against Tennessee where they harassed Will Levis for 8 sacks. It should be another one of those type of games. But it's not just the productivity. It's just not just how many pressures and sacks. It's how do they come? Is it coming from Jeff Hafley scheming up the defense to get after, or is it the defensive line doing what Jeff Hafley entered the season hoping they'd do, which is winning with 4, dropping 7 in coverage, just winning their matchups up front? I think that'll be very interesting. There's a long list of execution things and things that the offense needs to clean up. To me, the one thing on this defense, and it's a big thing, but the one thing that's really kind of lowered their ceiling is that defensive line adjusting to the 4-3. Whenever that happens, whenever they get comfortable in it, if they can get comfortable in it, and that's to assume that this isn't a team that's going to need to really draft that position extensively to fit a 4-3 in the spring. It might be. But whenever they do get comfortable with that, this is a defense that really, really could take off. Because everything else about this defense sure looks pretty good. But if you can't consistently get home with 4 pass rushers, it limits your ceiling as a unit. This is a week where they should be able to do that. I'll be very curious how much success they have. Lucas Van Ness was told at his locker as he's changing on Wednesday, he's asked what do you think when you see the Patriots have 9 sacks? All he said is, you love to see it. So they're very aware of the opportunity up front this week. Now the question is, can they take advantage of it?
Yeah, that's for you, Tom, just with the defense.
Yeah, well, 2 things. One, the Bears were without their 2 tackles. Both tackles were out against New England. And then they lost Tevin Jenkins, their left guard. So they were playing. And then Nate Davis, their guard that they paid $30 million to, came to the game and said, my back's hurting, I can't play. So I think they had like 6 linemen active, 6 or 7 linemen active. So they were a mess. The injury, based on the injury report Wednesday, Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright back, the 2 tackles both practiced. Tevin Jenkins, I don't know if he's going to play. He had an ankle injury. If Jones and Wright can play, then they're a little more stable. I think Caleb Williams is going to play. I think they're going to have him play a safe game. I think they're going to have him. There are a lot of bubble screens. I think they're going to max protect, let him try to get into a rhythm with a lot of short stuff. I think they're going to get the ball out of his hand. So I don't know if sacks will be plentiful. I think that's what they'll be fighting against. But if that's the case, then they got to figure out, how can they force him to, have to throw it deep and towards Xavier McKinney? How can they stay on top of these receivers and make sure they're not getting anything after the catch?
Yeah.
So.
I mean, obviously you get a big boost if Evan Williams and Jair are able to play on the secondary. But just sticking with the defensive line, the one guy that hasn't been practicing is Colby Wooden, one of the defensive tackles. Who are some other guys, especially now that there is no Preston Smith, who are some other guys on the defensive line? You could say veteran or new guys that you're looking at heading into this game.
One thing that's interesting is that the last couple of games they've started to use Colby Wooden as a end, and he was actually giving them. It made me wonder if that was another reason that they let Preston Smith go. Okay, well, we like Mosby, we like Brenton Cox, but Wooden is starting to play outside. He's built like a 4-3 defensive end. He's 6'3", 4, whatever, and he's got to be 275, 80 maybe. So he's a bigger guy. I wonder if they plan on playing him at end, but I would bet that Mosby gets a ton of time. Mosby I think is a good pass rusher, different body makeup than the other guys, and so probably the quickest, fastest of all those guys. So that's the guy I'm kind of curious to see.
Yeah. Anybody for you? Maybe same, different, or?
I think that Aaron Mosby gets more playing time, and he just had his first career half sack, which we talked about earlier this week. But to me, the stars got to be stars. And there's some stars on this defensive line that have not been stars. And that's the number one priority for Jeff Hafley to unlock, is how to get production out of Kenny Clark, Rashawn Gary, and Lucas Van Ness. That's 3 first-round picks that have, combined for 3.5 sacks this season. That has to change. Yeah. It starts with those 3 guys. Getting production from those 3 stars that are not playing like stars. And Lucas Van Ness, look, it's premature to call him a star. He had 5 sacks as a rookie. If you prioritize those 3, getting Lucas Van Ness to start building off of what he did last season is even the most important thing. We talk all the time about quarterbacks being in different systems. Probably not easy for a pass rusher to go from year 1, 3-4, to year 2, 4-3. I don't know if there's anyone on this defensive front that has more reason to struggle with the scheme change than Lucas Van Ness, but you have to figure out a way to get him to the quarterback because it just hasn't happened.
I guess it's interesting because every week we do these polls for Packers fans to weigh in, and one that we did as far as who's been one of the more surprising Packers player, who's been some of the more disappointing. I guess the guys that came up the most: Van Ness, Rashawn Gary, Kenny Clark, Quay Walker. But then offensively, they would throw in guys like Christian Watson and Dontavian Wicks. And it's interesting with the defensive line. And I guess, is it too early to tell as far as the defensive approach? Because you talked a lot about with Hafley saying he wants his down linemen to get pressure to the quarterback. Do you feel like he might ever reach a point where he has to throw out that game plan and say, okay, we're just going to have to send more blitzing and more pressure? Do you think he might ever reach that point?
Yeah, he already is. He's not necessarily sending more than 4 guys, but he's constantly bringing 7 guys up at the line of scrimmage and making teams guess, who's coming. He's been very aggressive from that standpoint, and it's not always the front 4. He was dropping Preston Smith quite a bit in the last game. I think Gary and Van Ness have to just step up. I mean, both of those guys played with their hands down in college, so they don't really have a huge excuse for why they're not playing. I mean, Gary maybe a little bit because he's been focused as a outside linebacker, a little different play. But both those guys need to be winning their one-on-ones, and they're not. And, they're getting some pressure, and, the turnovers, you can't ever count turnovers as just the secondary playing. There's always some pressure involved. But they need to be winning one-on-ones more often than they are. They're just not doing it.
Back to your question, here's what I'm curious about. I don't feel like it's something that can be sustained to just completely scratch the idea of getting home with 4. Like, the most ideal version of defense in this league is winning with 4 up front and dropping 7 in coverage, and that being the basis of your defense, your pass rush. You want more in coverage while still getting that rush. Jeff Hafley has done an exceptionally good job of scheming up pressure, but it no matter how much success you have with that, you don't want to just abandon the idea of getting home with your 4 defensive linemen. That still needs to be something that you're able to do as a defense frequently if you're going to be a great defense. And then you mix in the blitzes, you mix in the scheme and those sort of things. But the idea to me of just kind of rushing the passer strictly all based off scheme week in and week out, that's tough to be sustained.
As we near the end of the podcast, are there any final thoughts, guys? Maybe even from the special teams or just anything that you guys are keeping an eye on just as you get ready for Sunday's game?
Only that the Packers have to get on a run, and it's not easy. So they're facing their rival with a new offensive coordinator first game. Then they got to play the 49ers, who are starting to come back with Christian McCaffrey. Then Miami, which I have no idea what they'll be like. They just won a really nice game against the Rams.
They're tough to figure.
They're very tough to figure. But this is the time they got to get on a run. And, however they can get out of Soldier Field with a win, that's what they have to do. Doesn't matter if it's a 1-point game or a 27-point game. They just got to get out of there and then get something, some kind of run going.
Yeah. What about for you?
I think they will. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball.
Right.
I am still fairly high on this Packers team because I think there's a lot of talent. I think it's young talent. I think that I just saw this young talented team a year ago ascend at the right time and same coaching staff, and I understand that doesn't mean that history repeats itself because it absolutely is not guaranteed to. But I think that there's very good reason to think it could. And I think this is a great first step because this is a team that the Packers should handle, and it shouldn't be all that close. And if they're able to do that coming out of the bye, that can be a springboard to this pretty tough second half. It can instill confidence. If you were good in the red zone, if your pass rush looked more consistent, if you didn't have penalties, you didn't drop passes, no interceptions from Jordan Love for the first game this season. If these things start to rectify themselves, I think against a bad team, which is where that should start, I think that could be a big confidence boost. So I think that's what this week is, and we'll just have to see. But I'm still high on this team. You know what I'm not high on, and I'm sorry. I'm going to bring it up. The bear down thing has got to go. The bear down thing is there anything, I understand that it's not supposed to be as literal as it's become, but is there anything that's more just indicative of a franchise than the Bears are always down? Why do you celebrate this? Don't celebrate always being 4th place in the NFC North, which is how the song sounds when you're always 4th place in the NFC North. That's my spiel.
Bear down guy, Spoon?
I think it's okay. It's part of a song, so, and it's from, I don't know, the 20s or something like that. Yeah. I don't know. It's from way back. I actually like the Lions fight song.
What is it?
It's, I can't say it. I recognize it, but I hear it, but it always ends with "Go Lions."
I didn't know they. I'm sorry. I didn't know that the Lions had a fight song.
I haven't been to Detroit yet.
It's pretty cool. I actually think it's pretty good. I think it's a heck of a lot better than "Go Pack Go," which I think is really kind of dumb.
To be fair, "Go Pack Go" is not exactly inventive, and I'm not dissing on the Packers. I'm a Mets fan. We say "Let's go Mets." It's not inventive either, but it's still better than "Bear Down" when you're always down. To me. Yeah. Renegade in Pittsburgh. When I went to Las Vegas last season, the pre-kickoff song of Phil Collins "In the Air Tonight," those get my blood going. Yeah. Like I'm kind of in the press box, kind of doing one of these, swaying, and that's got my blood going. Bear down, man, that is just it's always a premonition of like you're always down. You are always down. I know it's not meant to be that way, but it's what it is.
Yeah, I'm pretty picky when it comes to like an the fight songs because I don't like Tomahawk Chops. I don't.
Nope.
I don't like Tighten Up.
Well, I'm a Mets fan, so I definitely don't like the Braves Tomahawk.
All those Bear Down, Tighten Up, All Around Town. Whatever you have, I probably won't like it. So
What about Skull? What about Skull?
I'm okay with Skull.
Are you?
I am.
Really?
I actually dig it, and I think it helps. Minneapolis is one of the few open air press boxes, so you kind of get a feel for it.
Yeah, you do.
I'm good with Skull.
Yeah. As far as with the Packers, I would say, go Pack, go. I don't really get it. I'm cool with bang on the drum all day though. After they score, I think it's not bad. It's.
I want to bang my head on the desk
All day?
I'm like, come on.
I like roll out the barrel. Roll out the barrel is good because I'm always down for a barrel. That's good with me.
Seventh inning stretch. I mean, come on, let's come up with something a little more modern.
But I think also partly I've only covered 6 Packers games, so it's still fresh. Hearing it at Lambeau,
Bang on the drum all day.
Bang on the drum all day. It's
It'll get old, Dominic. It'll get old.
I'm sure it will, right? So,
if only we could all be Wisconsin's jump around.
well, yeah,
They do it right.
They're
I'm
good.
tired of that.
Really?
You're a curmudgeon. That's what you are.
I think that's good. I think Roll Tide Roll. I think that's a solid one at Bama.
What do they have in Kentucky?
What do they? I already forgot. What did they have? Well, actually, the football team had Waka Flocka, Grove Street.
Okay.
That one, it's a party. That's a pretty good one. Louisville's fight song, it's okay. It's very old school. But the one that they both have, and obviously it gets me emotional, my old Kentucky home.
Oh, yeah.
When they
That's
play
a good
that
one.
after games and
That's a good
before
one.
the Kentucky Derby, that's the shed a tear. What was that movie, Denzel Washington, Glory? He just shed the one little tear. That's what happens when I old Kentucky.
You shed a tear? I got to get this on camera now.
Well,
we got to get some visual evidence of this.
Play my old Kentucky home. That's what you're gonna get. So
Snow on Wisconsin.
fair enough. We're going off the rails here, but as we get
Music's
back,
great.
yeah,
You're welcome. That was my fault. I'll own that.
it's good for the soul. So, but yeah, it is just going to be an interesting game, and I am curious in what happens with this team if they can get on a run. And I guess right now the football gods are on the Packers side because you can say they're healthy and they have everybody in place to try to make something happen. So we'll see as we get on the second half of the season, and it starts Sunday at noon in Chicago, Soldier Field, with the Packers taking on rival Bears.
Deep dish? You a deep dish guy?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, I'm not a deep dish guy.
No?
What about you, Spoon?
No, think rest. Don't think rest.
I'm just Dominique's trying to
York
close
style.
here, and I'm like pizza.
Well,
Pizza.
That's a good one. We can keep the podcast going if we're
New
talking
York style
pizza.
all the time. All the time, New York style. Fold that triangle up, big slice. Give me the New York style. Forget the deep dish.
I do like a good deep dish pizza, but I'll say this: I only like it in Chicago. But for a normal day, I'll get thin crust pizza. But in Chicago, I like to do.
You know what I like?
The whole
I like stuffed crust pizza. I can't help it. I don't do it crust first, but you put that cheese in the crust, and it makes me melt.
It's good. It's good. So, any other food things from?
I don't think so. Who knows what'll be said off camera?
The comments are going to be great, right? But anyways, yeah, I am getting pizza when I head.
We
to
doing
Chicago
that?
this
We doing
week.
that Saturday
Yeah,
night?
We got to get
okay.
pizza.
I'm not going to do deep dish. Will you judge me?
No.
Okay.
As long as I can get deep dish.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
I'll be a happy guy. Thank you all so much for checking out the Green 19 podcast for all your football and food needs and fight songs and everything else in between. For Ryan Wood, Tom Silverstein, I'm Dominique Yates.